But one of the things I found both in Japanese companies in the US as well as American companies, the one that I worked for as a plant manager, there was this tremendous tension between the HR department and the way I was doing things and the way the Japanese wanted to do things in the factory. There were HR policies that were working against what we were trying to do. And I actually saw a shift from the 1980s to the 1990s where HR became less an advocate of employees and more a protector of the company from lawsuits. They were kind of like the poor man's first line of defense. And then, if you got to get the lawyers involved, they come in later. So a lot of these policies were geared toward protecting the company. But I'll give you a specific example. My policy, and I learned it from the Japanese, and it was psychological. Don't blame the operator for mistakes. In fact, it's the manager's job to provide the conditions that will allow your subordinates to succeed. And if they don't succeed, it's most of it's on you. Not all of it, but a big chunk of it. So to put it in crude terms, in the US, the shit rolls downhill. In Japan, in the factory, it rolls uphill. Okay. And the HR department had a 3 strikes and you're out policy, which was punitive. So I would go to the errant operator, and I did this many times. I would apologize. I'm so sorry I didn't give you a good process. Again, I learned it from my Japanese mentors. And then I'd invite that person to be on our improvement team, and I would train them how to analyze the situation, basic industrial engineering principles, that were, facilitated, simplified. So these uneducated folks could understand it and apply it. They were smart people. And what I would do is, rather than creating a resentful employee, I would get valuable feedback because they do the job every day. They would own the solution. A lot of it was their idea. And so psychologically, they would be on board. And now they felt safe and that they weren't going to be blamed. And it took a long time for me. I was always fighting the HR department because they wanted me to write them up. But they called it a corrective action because they wanted to pretend they were doing total quality management. And what's so interesting about this is, this basic philosophy really came from Deming, but it's also rooted in Confucian ideology, where the leader has to take responsibility for any discord created below them, at least in principle, if not in reality. So I was always battling the HR department. And again, I know HR people are probably going to get mad at me, but here's one of the assumptions that I thought the Japanese made that was really good and also transferable across cultures. And that is that when people wake up in the morning, very few people say, I'm going to go to work today and do a crappy job. Most people want to do a good job. People are basically good. You see it in Shinto religion. You baptize kids not to get rid of original sin, but to make sure they remain protected and pure. So even in the religion, you see this idea that people are basically good. So if you manage from that perspective rather than the punitive, I found it was much more effective, not only in building teams and showing empathy and showing people that you care, but when you go out and you say, you know what, I'm sorry, I didn't give you a good enough process. Let's work together and do it. It drives fear out of the organization, which is what you need. So people will reflect and want to continue doing Kaizen without fear of losing their jobs or making mistakes. So that's kind of just a counter to, I'm not saying all HR people are bad. I think they're great. I just think sometimes, certainly in the US, a litigious culture has created this kind of different role that's kind of at odds with the Kaizen philosophy.